you are running advertising through an agency, a freelancer, a consultant, or even a full-time employee, you've probably noticed that everyone seems to be doing the exact same thing, and even if they're telling you they're doing different things, they're getting the exact same result. My name is Sam Polero. I used to run ads for VaynerMedia, one of the biggest agencies in all of New York City, and then I went on to run ads for BarkBox, the largest direct-to-consumer e-commerce subscription brand in the entire world. Now, I own and operate the Moonlighters. We help brands go from 7 figures to 8 figures using the exact process that I'm gonna break down in this video. The process we're gonna go over is exactly how we take 7-figure brands and turn them into 8-figure brands. There's 6 steps in this process that are all extremely detailed, and we're gonna hit them all in about 10 minutes. So the first step of our process is the discovery and deep dive phase. This is where we learn everything that the client is currently doing, whether it's in Facebook ads, Google ads, it doesn't matter. If they're running ads, if they're spending money behind it, we need to figure out what is wrong and diagnose all of the issues. This is the most important part of the process because this is essentially going to serve as our roadmap for at least the first 90 days. There are going to be a ton of issues that we see in every single ad account that we need to add to our checklist and solve right before we launch. So one of the biggest concerns we get when we're onboarding a new client is what are we going to do with all of those old campaigns? What if there's really good parts of those campaigns, whether it's ads, ad sets, or even the campaign level and strategy that is functioning and working well? We put our egos aside and we don't necessarily delete everything that your previous agency or your consultant was doing. Most of the time, there's a few good nuggets in there that we can still work off of. But let's be real, there's going to be parts that we need to change. There's going to be parts we need to cut completely, and there's going to be parts that we just need to modify and put our right settings on. That transition period really could take anywhere from the first week all the way up to the first month. That is the time when we're running a combination of your old campaigns plus our new campaigns, but we're not just letting those old campaigns run. We're tweaking them day by day to make sure that they catch up to our new campaigns. Right around the 4-week mark, ideally, every single campaign in the ad account is 100% tuned up with our settings. The second step of this process is the anti-automation, anti-AI mode. We basically like to call this the no such thing or the no easy mode. So many companies are algorithmic based. Now, algorithms definitely help how we can shift our advertising. There's even bid strategies like max conversions or target CPA. There's a ton of strategies that are AI based. But if we totally rely on the algorithm to spend our money wherever it wants to, it's really just going to line the pockets of Facebook and Google. Because if you really think about it from a company perspective, their job is to make as much money for their platform as possible. Now, I'm not going to get too much into that, but what we really want to focus on here is that we need to micromanage our strategy. What we can't do is just give all the control to Facebook and Google. I want to really emphasize how important this is. Right now, your Facebook rep or your Google rep is probably telling you, run broad keywords, run broad audiences, use Advantage Plus. These should ring a bell if you are running ads right now. Here's the problem with that. If you run a broad keyword for, say, camera lens, and you're just running camera lens, all of a sudden, you're gonna hit on search terms that are actually for full cameras or even tripods. It could be so different than what you're actually trying to serve your customer. And think about how critical this could be in your exact industry, right? If you are, say, a beauty brand that's selling skincare products, and one of your products is called Fluffy Lotion, right? That Fluffy Lotion could be literally marked in so many different ways for Google and ultimately put your spend in the wrong places, which is the most important thing. Ultimately, as a growth marketer, the number one thing we need to do is place money where it will convert the best to acquire new customers for our clients. So the third step of this process is doing the work that nobody wants to do. This is arguably the biggest pain point for any consultant, agency, freelancer, even full-time employee. There are so many things you can do, and Facebook and Google just makes it so easy. Now, in life, we love to take the path of least resistance, right? We don't always like to take the hard road. But if we are very, very real about it, and especially if you're a CEO and you're looking for someone who's really gonna execute for you, the hard road is going to be the better road in the case of advertising. Let's just give 2 examples here. If we have the one path, the easy mode. That is what I mentioned before, broad match keywords. It could be performance max. It could be advantage plus. You're just kind of throwing crap at the wall and hoping that it sticks and hoping that it works for you. On the total flip side to that, what if you had a methodical system where you had dozens and dozens of ad sets, dozens of creative, all segmented, all named properly, that you actually knew what was working and what was not working? If you set it up this way, you will quickly be able to realize, okay, creative A stinks, get it out of here. Creative B is great, scale it, spend more money behind it. I think you probably understand the logic of this. You need to have more triggers that you can pull on at any time to be able to make things better. The world of advertising, if you do find that new creative or that new message that works, it's gonna give you a big lift. We all know that. We know that's gonna drive more conversions. Or if you come out with a new product line, that could totally change the game. But if you have already hit your marketing message well, and you've already have good copy and good creative, which most brands actually do. There's a misconception here. A lot of brands have beautiful creative, beautiful copy, good product shots. What I'm trying to get to here is the changes you need to make on a day-to-day in advertising are not to get 10% better. They're literally to get 0.5% better or 1% better every single day. Every time there's an opportunity, we just need to improve things 1 or 2%. Because when we add those up over the course of the year, that is the difference between making $500,000 in revenue from your ads or $1 million in revenue from your ads. And that's literally the difference between a 1.0 ROAS and a 1.5 ROAS, or just improving things 1% for about 60 days. Okay, so I hinted at this in step 3, but step 4 is about endless optimizations. There really should never be a time, no matter how great your ROAS gets or how low your cost per acquisition gets, that you should just stop optimizing. You should never just let it run. And that is the problem that's happening right now. You have these advantage plus campaigns or these broad campaigns where you're just letting it run and hoping for the best. How could you ever expect to be better than your competition if they're all doing this and you're just gonna do the same thing? We all know that's not how the marketplace works. It's not how capitalism works, right? You need to outmaneuver your competition, and the only way we're gonna do that is by making changes incrementally over time and endlessly optimizing. It is a constant loop of analyzing the data, looking at the creatives, looking at the audiences that you're running, changing those audiences, changing those creatives, leaning in to the creatives that are working or leaning into the audiences that are working. You might test a new audience, like for example, if you're a clothing brand or if you're a fashion brand, you might want to test Zara, right? Zara has a really great, strong audience. If Zara works for you, you could just test Mango or Lululemon next because those have similar overlap. You don't just want to say, oh, we're going to try Zara and then, you know what? I'm going to try people who are interested in women's clothing. It's just like one thing from a totally separate section, right? You want to be very iterative about this process and have a constant loop of feedback amongst you, your team, the creative, and the audiences that you're running. Now, the final step here, and this is most important, is scaling. Whenever we have something good, we need to put all our chips behind it and scale. Now, I know that's really, really broad way of thinking about things, but that is essentially growth marketing. That is advertising. When you find a message or creative, an audience, whatever it is in the platform, when you figure out what is working, it is your job, or really it is our job for the clients that we manage to turn that spend up. Now, that could be to unreasonable amounts of spend, of course, with the approval of the clients that we're working with, but it could be so fast that you didn't expect it just 2 days ago. So you could have one piece of creative to one audience that suddenly drives a 2 ROAS when the rest of your account drives a 1. If you could double your results, wouldn't you spend as much money as possible to do it? If you could bet on the fastest horse, if LeBron James was playing high school pickup basketball, wouldn't you bet on LeBron James every single time that whoever team he's on, they're gonna win? That it's gonna happen every single time because he's a pro. So once you find that pro in your advertising messaging, you need to scale behind it. You need to put all your chips on it and spend. So the scaling process happens in waves, right? We figure out one thing that works and we scale, we scale, we scale. Once we start to see signs of fatigue, okay, we pull it back, we pull it back, we pull it back, and then we're patient, we optimize, we have that endless cycle that we already talked about, and then we figure out, another creative or another audience that we're feeling confident based on the data. It always has to be based on the data that we can then push up and scale more. So to recap from the top, we first have our discovery deep dive. This is where we figure out all the problems and we diagnose. We have a huge checklist that comes from this. Second part here is the transition period. This is where you are going from whoever you're working with to working with us, and we push our ego aside and we say, there's probably some good work here. Let's maximize that good work, and then let's add our system right alongside and on top of it. The third step is the anti-AI and automation period. This is just making sure that we're not just giving all the control to these advertising platforms, right? We cannot do that. We have to zig when they zag. We have to make sure that we have the control over our brand messaging, where we're showing up, and how we're doing it, and not just saying, hey, run to everyone. Do whatever you want, Google. Do whatever you want, Facebook. We both know logically that does not make sense. The fourth step of this process is the strategy and doing what no one else wants to do. This is the hard work. This is setting up dozens and dozens of audiences at the same time. This is being very meticulous in your setup. This is actually creating the system for step 5, which is no guesswork. Step 5 really focuses on being able to pull all of those triggers to actually figure out what works and not just taking total guesses based on what we're feeling that day, right? We always want to use key data points. That's why step 5 is so important. We have no guesswork and building 1% better every single day. The final step, the biggest step here, which is scaling. This is going to be the most uncomfortable step for a lot of brands, especially if you're in the $1 to $10 million range. This is how you get from $1 million in revenue to $10 million in revenue. You have to scale and you have to be confident in whoever's pulling those triggers to actually spend the money in the right places. So what this means for us is whatever we have figured out from the zero guesswork strategy and having all and everything mapped out for us, what we figured out we need to push money against, right? Put our chips on LeBron James when he's playing high school players. That's the strategy to go from 1 to 10. And this process is exactly what we do for our clients to bring them from 7 figures to 8 figures. If you are one of those businesses that drives around $1 million to $10 million in revenue and you want to move to 10 plus, hit the link in the description and we'll talk soon.